What's up, y'all? What's good? Welcome to the What Up Though Show. It's your boy Dame D, and I am back with another one. What's good, y'all? Happy Friday, and it's Juneteenth. What better day to have Freestyle Friday on? So I'm going to wait for a few of my guests to jump in. I know a lot of people had a lot of things going on today, a lot of unplanned things. So I sent out links a little late, so people may or may not come in. But I got the comment section open. The last time we did a show, I did not have my comment section open, so it's open. You guys able to see the comments that come through, therefore we're able to interact. But I need you guys to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Give me your thoughts on today's show. It's Juneteenth. Let me check my audio and video. What up to everybody over there on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram? But I just about to check my audio and make sure that everybody can hear your boy. So give me 1 second. Hopefully everybody's having a great Friday. I'm probably all right. Testing, test. Okay, there we go. So we definitely can be heard. So yeah, I'm not probably going to be long today. I just want to come in and just talk a little bit about Juneteenth and all the little bit about this Carmelo Anthony trial and all the racism and the talks that's been going on throughout the country since this trial started a few years ago. So I'll wait for a few people to come in or wait for a few guests to jump in, and then we'll just go in and start to talk. But until then, hopefully everybody's having a great Friday. Yesterday it was Local 51 voting. It was another great turnout. For Local 51, I want to thank everybody who came out there and casted their votes. A lot of people talk about change, and the only way you can make change is through voting. So again, I want to give a shout out to the Local 51. It was a great turnout. Everybody came out there, cast their votes, and it was a good thing. And that's the only way you can make changes. And it's kind of going to lead up to tonight's conversation. It was, like I said, it was a great turnout. A lot of people showed up. So congratulations to the candidates whoever won last night. Yeah. So we got a lot of people jumping in and out. I'm going to wait till a few of my guests come in, and then we have a steady flow of people actually watching them before I start up the conversation. And like I said, I'm not going to be too long. Sound like I'm actually losing my voice. Had a heated conversation with one of my cousins about religion, and I try to stay away from politics and religion. Those are two of the most touchiest conversations and subjects to talk about. So I want to give a shout out to my cousin Philip Lee. Good guy, good family man. He's passionate about religion. Therefore he should. So we have great conversations and great debates about certain things. But like I said, I try not to too much get off into religion and politics. People tend to get into their feelings when you're talking about certain things, so I try not to get into that. But when I do, I try to at least give my honest opinion on what I think, about the situation. So like I said, I had a heated, well, not even a heated, just a really good discussion, with my cousin today, talking about religion and things like that. So I'm a little bit hoarse from that, but I just want to come on, man, and just give my thoughts on today's conversation, man. It's Freestyle Friday. This is how we do it every Friday. I need for you guys to make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and share. Your boy is still knocking on the door of 1,000K, man. We getting there, so I need for you guys to make sure that you're going over to YouTube, especially all my people that's watching me on Facebook. I have a lot of Facebook people that's watching me. I would appreciate if you guys come on over to YouTube, to the channel, and hit that subscribe button, and then you can go back over to Facebook. Same thing with the people over on Instagram. But I want to thank everybody who's contributed to the show by hitting that subscribe button, by hitting that like and that share button. It's definitely been helping your boy achieve his goals. What I've been trying to do with this YouTube thing. We just try to entertain you guys, bring good entertaining shows, great conversations and things like that. So like I said, man, cannot do it without you guys hitting that subscribe button. Your boy is bearing down. We're closing down on 1K subscribers. But like I said, before I start today's conversation, I'm gonna wait on a few more people to join, and I have a few guests that I invited to come on in. But if not, I'm just gonna go ahead and start to show up regardless. I have a few topics on the table today. One is the whole Juneteenth thing today. So I need for you guys to give me your thoughts on Juneteenth. How did you spend your day? How do you feel about Juneteenth? Give me your thoughts. Is it something that you celebrate? Is it something that you commemorate? Is it something that you teach your children, your grandchildren, and things like that? But like I said, I have waiting on one of many that I invited to come in and join the conversation. So if you guys want to come on in too, like I said, the comment section is definitely open. Definitely had to, and I'm upset that I had the comment section off the last time. I did not know that the comments were not coming through and you guys were not able to see, but they're definitely on now. I see it. So the comment section is open. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts, your opinion on tonight's show. Freestyle Friday. And like I said, I'm just waiting on one of my guests that I invited to come in. And I want to give a shout out to my homeboy, Brian B. Mentor. Happy birthday. It's his birthday today. I believe he is 50, maybe be 50 years old today. So what up? I want to say what up, though, to my homeboy, B. Mentor. He's 50 years old today. I invited him, so he may come in, he may not. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and start tonight's conversation, man. What and my question that I probably would have asked to one of my guests, what does Juneteenth mean, to you guys? To me, Juneteenth is a time to reflect on the end of an era, a horrible era of things that were done to a group of people. So today to me is a great day to reflect on the end of slavery, the end of that era. It was a horrible thing that went on. It should have never happened. This was a thing, that divides that, that's been having this country divided since I've been alive. It's always going to be a racial divide amongst this country when you're dealing with, especially with the melting pot that we have now in this country. But, when it comes to black and whites, it's always going to be a hard conversation or hard pill to swallow for both sides when you talk about, this whole slavery thing. The whites of today feel like, they had nothing to do with slavery. They felt like that blacks complain about it. We still talk about it, complain. But, what whites need to fail to realize is even now today, meaning that the whites of today, maybe you guys didn't not have nothing to do with slavery, but a lot of you guys benefit from what your ancestors did during slavery. So a lot of people don't want to talk about the truth and how it affected and how it still affect a race and a group of people to this day. A lot of whites want people, want blacks, African Americans to forget about this whole slavery thing. They're little by little trying to erase the traces and the signs and just the whole history of slavery. So we, as Black Americans, we have to do our due diligence, by talking about things like that, by keeping this alive, by they're trying to take it out of the schools. It's a lot of schools that does not even have African American history or things like this on the on the school curriculum, and that's a shame. We've got a few comments. Jay Crispy said, "Fuck Donald Trump. He's a pedophile. Donald Trump is a racist psychopath." I believe that's what you meant to say. But give me your thoughts, man. Jay Crispy, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. I would love to hear your thoughts on Juneteenth, what it means to you. How do you reflect on this day? And this is a time for, for most of us to reflect, because a lot of our ancestors, man, and I'm trying to find the right word, the royalties and the liberties that we have to this day, we got it off the sweat, the back, the blood, and the tears of our ancestors. So we have to definitely do our due diligence, always make sure that we talk about days like this. This was a great time in history. Like I said in the beginning, this was something that should never happen. you know um it should have never went on. And we definitely need to reflect, and we definitely need to continue to educate our youngers about what happened to our ancestors. And whites also need to be educated, a lot about this whole slavery thing, because whites seem to think that we carry a grudge, which we don't carry a grudge. We just need for you guys to understand you know what our ancestors went through, and it hurts to hear and see the things that they went through. And we still go through a lot of this racism and things that went on back then to this day now. And that's what pretty much is like opening up reopening up a scab, by continue to show racism, and to show a difference between the races. And I think that's where the two are always going to be able to divide at, because like I said, white folks believe that the whites of today, that they had nothing to do with slavery back then. But a lot of them need to realize that they benefit from what their ancestors did during the slavery time today. A lot of people made millions off the backs of our people. A lot of these businesses that's thriving to this day, are is making have made millions off the backs of slaves. Their companies went on to prosper, and probably are Fortune 500 companies to this day now. So it's a lot. It's always going to be a lot when it comes to slavery. And it talks about this racial divide. And just like, and what's so crazy, man. What's been going on throughout the country leading up to today, leading up to Juneteenth. A lot of and now even the Asian community, they've joined the parade of trying to show hatred towards blacks, when in my opinion, you don't really see that many blacks spewing hatred towards any especially Asian groups. You know what I mean? We tend to patronize their businesses. We tend to fill their pockets with money. So if anything, Asians should definitely give their respects and their due respect and honor to blacks, because they've come in this country. I don't believe whites are frequently visiting or patronizing these nail salons, getting their eyelashes and buying these wigs and hair and things like that. And let's just be real about it. A lot of the money that they make have been off the sweat, blood, and tears of our people. And I had a short that I did not too long ago. I said, now is a perfect time for our people who have money to be able to put their money where their mouth is, and and open up a business, open up, because for one thing, man, when we go out here and we boycott these businesses and things like that, we have to be ready to be able to put another business in the place of that business that pretty much shut down. Because the goal is to shut that business down. If you boycott them, you're not just going to boycott and just stop. The goal is to try to shut that business down. But the thing is, what we have to do in the black community, man, we have to be ready to be able to put a business up in that community in place of that business that we shut down. Because we don't need these other businesses in our community, any longer. If they've been there for 30, 40 years, continuing to, like I said, disrespect, most of the black people that come in the stores and patronize these businesses. Pretty much, man, we're just like a walking check to, a lot of these businesses that's in our communities. So yeah, man, today I just want to come on and talk a little bit, give my opinion, my thoughts, man, on Juneteenth, commemorate, this day was the day, that ended the day of slavery. But, in all actual facts and reality, our people were free 2 years, I believe, before they actually were told. A lot of people, and what's so crazy and sick, man, um, a lot of the owners, slave owners and things like that, whites that own slaves, they knew this shit, continue to allow the slaves to be slaves and work, on these fields for free. A lot of them should still be getting paid, back pay from that shit, plus interest. But I was having a talk with Big Hen, earlier, and I was like, man, it comes a time where, we have to, we've been patient with America, and waiting on, these folks to change things and come to their senses about, this whole reparation things, man. What we have to do is demand and tell them what we want, give them, come up with some type of plan, of what we want out of this reparation versus them trying to come up with an idea or plan. We have to come up with a bill, an idea and plan, to be able to make this shit happen. Because other than that, man, it's all talk, and we need to stop this talk and put shit into action, and like I said, come forward with some type of a build and plan and force them to come up with some type of money and reparations, because they did it for the Chinese, they did it for the Jewish community, so it's time to, pay back some of this blood, sweat, and tears that was, made back off the backs of our ancestors, man. Like I said, for 2 whole years, a lot of these slaves did not even know that they were free. And slave owners continue to allow them to work for free. They continue to prosper, and now to this day, a lot of these businesses, or a lot of these people that own slaves, own businesses that went on and continue to go on and prosper off the pretty much the blood, sweat, and tears, of our people. We were promised things out of slavery that never happened. The 40 acres and the mule, which was a pot of bullshit, that was still owed to us. We've never set claim to that. And what drives me crazy about that, a lot of our so-called leaders sit, in high offices, they don't even bring a lot of this shit to the forefront. So that's why I say, man, we have to stop waiting around for handouts. We as a group, as a people, need to demand, we need to get a group of, I'm not gonna even say so-called leaders, but people with the right, like lawyers and things like that, to draw up, a plan on what was owed and what is going to be fair. A lot of land has been stolen. We've always been 3 steps behind, man. Anytime that when it comes to, after slavery, rules were set up to stop us from succeeding. Nobody owes us what? Money is definitely owed, and that's where whites got to get off of that. Money is owed to the ancestors. Because like I said, no one said that to when the Jews were paid back money, when the Chinese were paid back reparations. Like, come on, cut it out. So that's why I say we have to demand, because we're not asking. We're to the point where trying to ask and a march and all that, that's not doing anything. We have to be able to come together with, with smart people, lawyers, and put some type of draw up some type of agreement. And make them stick to this motherfucking agreement. And that's it, but yeah, because as we all know, this was a horrible thing that was done to our ancestors. And a lot of these businesses are still prospering prospering from the blood, sweat, and tears off of these people's back. No one's asking for anything. We're just asking for, not even asking. Shit needs to be fair. Shit is not fair. You motherfuckers don't have a head start on a lot of things, because of slavery. It could have been 10,000 years ago. You motherfuckers go back 30 years and still try to charge African Americans for crimes that pretty much should have been over with. But yeah, I don't give a fuck if it was 400 years ago. That shit is still due. It should be a lot. 400 years worth of interest needs to be put on top of that. Because if the shoe was on the other foot, trust me. Yep. So, today is a day to reflect on the release and the end of slavery, which, like I said, see, and this is another thing, these slaves were free 2 years before they even knew it, and a lot of slave owners continue to let these slaves work for free, not pay them or any of that. Come on. It was just straight bullshit. It was straight hatred. A lot of the things that went on, real talk, motherfuckers should be trying to trace back lineages of all the shit that went on and all the crooked shit, and at least have civil suits against a lot of these businesses that prosper. We can't go and lock a lot of the men up because they're no longer here, but you can hit them financially with a lot of these businesses that can be traced back to slavery. Because they kept records on everything during that time. Yeah, and then now, like I said, we see, the other races, especially what's been going on throughout this this country this year with the whole CARMELO Anthony case, man. The whites are definitely showing their true colors and how they feel, and what's so crazy, we go on to watch a lot of unjust killings by the police, by police shooting young black men and even women. I've done multiple shows on women getting shot in the head by police and being found and these shootings are being found justified. Just no respect or no really, like I said, at the end of the day, there's no, outside of the black race, there's no regards for black life, and it shows in the court system, because how can you find it justified to shoot a man that's running away from you in the back? And we've saw multiple cases of this. And I'm gonna read a few comments. Green Harper said their children are benefiting today off the free labor of our ancestors. They just don't want to hear that. I've been saying that since I started. A lot of these motherfuckers don't realize that they benefit. A lot of these profitable businesses that own slaves and went on to start other business after the slave trade ended are still prospering from these businesses from money that was made through the slave trade or through slavery. And they're benefiting off of what their ancestors made and did. So and that's just the unjust. And we can talk about that all day long. So and like I said, man, even after slavery, after they ended slavery, slaves were still working out there in the fields, working for free, not being paid anything, and like I say, even after slavery ended, a lot of promises was promised to African Americans that was not upheld. It was just all lies and bullshit. The 40 acres and mule. We definitely need to hold them to these not promises, to these contracts. Because at the end of the day, these should have been regarded as contracts. Lisa, and I don't want to tear up your last name, Gadama said black people need to rule their own people, not government benefits. And I agree, but the government does need to pay up for what they owe. And I'm not saying the government, but yeah, I agree. We need to rule over our own people, but it's things that's owed. We're behind the 8 ball. from our counterparts. Our counterparts were allowed to go on and make billions, before we were allowed to be established at making businesses or making money. So we've been living in a country where we've been behind the eight ball. We've been show hatred towards. We've been we've been just a lot of things that goes on with, just the justice system, with the banking system. We just been turned around for a lot of things, or just mistreated, in a way where it wasn't fair, and that's where blacks, we need to realize that it's always going to be like that, and I agree with what Lisa said. We have to do for our own. That's why I talked about now is the perfect time for, our black women who spend billions of dollars, with these agents, with the lashes, the the nails, the wigs, and and things like that. And getting their tails done. We spend millions of money with these agents. And they do nothing. They give back nothing to our community. And this has been going on for a long time. They've been able to prosper, make a lot of money off the backs of our people, and still to this day show no respect. When it's crazy, when they shouldn't show no respect to our counterparts. But we get the short end of the stick. But man, at the end of the day, I need for you guys to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Give me your thoughts on what Juneteenth mean to you. I would love to hear all you guys' thoughts. Gwen Harper said black people truly have no allies. Yeah, no outside of black folks. Black people, no one, our counterparts have no regards for the life of black people. And it shows, like I said, man, in the court, the law system, it shows by the comments that whites make when blacks are trying to stand behind, a young man that was, pretty much dealt a fucked up hand, with this Carmelo Anthony situation. Whites act like this young man started this situation, and all I've been hearing is so much animosity against this young man, when he was just up under a tent, just like the other students out there, minding his business. He did not approach this guy, and people act like this young man went out there and sought out trying to kill this young man. He defended himself, and that was it. So what's the difference when cops fear for their lives? And clearly, we can see what we saw, when young men are shot in the back, motherfuckers putting their knees on motherfuckers' necks and things like that. Black women getting shot in their head for holding pots and shit like that. Most of these motherfuckers have no regard for our life. It's a fact. We have to realize that ourselves. We keep continuing going on thinking things are going to change. We keep thinking that someone is going to come back and save us and change this situation. No, only how we can change this if we do it on ourselves. Gwen Harper said Carmelo was defending himself. Pray he gets an appeal. Oh, he's definitely going to get an appeal. With all the new allegations and things that's been coming out. But yeah, this young man was put in a situation where he was defending himself. And that young man died, but I guarantee you, Carmelo Anthony did not go out there that day with the intentions on taking someone's life. And that's it. That's the difference between, being a person running away and being shot in the back. Clearly, it's a murder, homicide. We've saw multiple officers walk away with no charges, with justifiable homicides, justifiable shootings, year after year, case after case. And what do? We have to take this shit. We have to start taking justice into our own hands. And a lot of this shit would stop immediately. Yeah, he murdered someone. I'm not saying he's innocent. Tony Decano Pena, I believe. I don't have my glasses on, so but yeah, I'm not saying he was innocent, but at the same time, He was defending himself. He did not push his own self. He did not start this incident. So therefore, to me, if anything, it should have been some type of what's the other charge of that negligent homicide or some shit like that, or manslaughter, if anything. Because we've seen plenty of other races that committed crimes towards blacks walk away with no time or, a few years. We had to pretty much put up with it and swallow it. So that's why a lot of blacks are upset with the verdict. 35 years from when we see young black men, young women shot in their motherfucking head, and motherfuckers walk away free, or do minimum time. That's the unjust. That's the unjust that I talk about, that, blacks get in this system. And the system is not the criminal system, the justice system pretty much is not set up to protect blacks. One thing we have to do is change about that, man, is start making sure that we get more blacks on these juries. Because at the end of the day, that's what pretty much, those were one of the things that fucked him in that trial. Gwen Harper, and let me read this. Gwen Harper also said they lied as usual, and the judge only allows certain evidence that would make Carmelo look more guilty. Racism was definitely working in that courtroom. Most definitely. A lot of shit was not brought forward that went on in that case. They did not show a lot of the footage that they had on that they had on camera that was showing Carmelo actually defending himself, trying to run away from the situation, trying to get away from these guys. He was actually attacked. The media, in my opinion, I've heard a lot of stuff about how the media covered up a lot of the injuries that was done to him. He was bruised all up. They were, his parents and Carmelo were saying, but during the media, they were able to Photoshop and make it look like there was nothing wrong with him, man. So it's a lot of we are always behind the 8 ball. Okay, well, if you saw the video, retard, you wouldn't be saying that stupid shit at Matt Hall. Because anybody with clear eyes can see that these motherfuckers do a lot of lying and trying to hold evidence to make certain people look guilty, and that's exactly what happened. You have a right to defend yourself. This man, I'm quite sure, didn't go out there. And then when they say who, and this is what kills me with white people, who brings a knife to a school? You motherfuckers are known for carrying knives, hunting and things like that. And it wasn't even a butcher knife or something like that. It was a regular size fucking pocket knife. And that was it. Tony, okay, I think I did read that. But yeah, you motherfuckers are the main reason why they sell them motherfucking knives. Because you do a lot of more purchasing with these pocket knives. Everyone, I was a Boy Scout. I used to have a pocket knife. So there's no there was nothing guilty or illegal about him having that pocket knife, first and foremost. He protected himself, and that young man died, from the results of the young man's action. In all actuality, you guys are trying to blame Carmelo Anthony for something this motherfucker started. And that's real talk. That's what a lot of you, and I'm not gonna say all, because there's a lot of white folks that keep it real when they see unfit justice or some bullshit. Okay, Mr. John is back, said, oh yeah, everybody knows about, hold on, let me back it up. He said, oh yeah, everybody knows about the white stabbing crime wave. If not mistaken, you're just perfect stereotyping. Hold on. You're just perfect stereotyping the IQ of the black man. See, and there y'all go with the bullshit talk, man. I'm trying to make stupid comments, but it sounds like to me Carmelo Anthony was a 3.8 student, and it looks like I think Austin Metcalf was more of a lower IQ student. He didn't even have the conscience to be able to use So he didn't have any self-control in this show. It shows out of the two races who have more of the self-control, you know, and throughout history, it showed how much self-control and hatred and the things that your ancestors have done over time and still do to this day. You know, that's why we're on here talking about Juneteenth, you know, because it was a horrible thing that was done, you know, by your ancestors, you know, to my ancestors, you know, which a lot of people always say, especially white, well, we don't have anything to do with that, but a lot of you benefit from what your ancestors did to this day. Yeah. So, and I guarantee you, if things was evened up and a lot of the contracts that were made back then, and business were allowed, and our business were allowed to prosper, and things was just on the up and up, I guarantee you, there would be no complaints about any of this shit. You know, because at one point in time, blacks were pretty much, I'm not gonna say leading the economy, but had no dependence on white society. You know, I think integration was probably one of the most horrible things that happened to the black society, because we at one point, you know, we were building our businesses up, our communities up, you know, and it's always going to be a jealousy thing. You know, that's why I say, man, race is always going to be an issue. Nothing is never going to change about that, because the whole thing about race, it's a race of who's going to be on top. You know, everything that, you know, everything that goes around is definitely going to come back around. We once ruled, you know, and it's definitely going to come back around. And I think what white society is afraid of is they're afraid of, when it's our time to come back around and rule, that we are going to remember what was done to us and keep that over them. You know, because a lot of them won't live to see it, you know, but we will continue, we will get back on ruling and dominating like how we once used to, you know. But at the end of the day, man, it's not us who goes around and spread the hatred. We're just a group of people, man, that's trying to navigate through this racist, hatred-filled country. You know, and it's been like that ever since I've been alive. You know, and like I said, man, I want to give you know, praise and thanks to a lot of our ancestors, man, that, you know, died trying to fight to change laws, you know, that gave their lives trying to change the injustice that were going on, you know, so, you know, that we can live and have the freedoms, you know, and the things that we enjoy today. You know, so, but at the end of the day, man, it was a horrible thing that was done. It was a day that came that brought that shit to an end. It should have never happened. The world know it was a evil and cruel thing that was done to a group of people, you know, and it's always consequences to evil actions like that, you know. And like I said, there were contracts that were made, 40 acres and mules, land was owed. None of these promises were fulfilled, you know, and don't think that for once that the black community or the black race should ever forget about, you know, what was owed and what is a definite, I mean, what will definitely be paid one day. Yep. So yeah, man, I need for you guys to like, comment, subscribe, and share. The comment section is open. I want to thank everybody for their comments. Mr. John is back. He said, "Oh yeah, everybody knows about the white." Okay, I did read that. My bad. Gwen Harper said, "Ignore these racist bastards that are coming." Oh man, you know, I ignore it. It doesn't bother me. You know, it just shows me that we're living amongst a bunch of racist motherfuckers who don't appreciate, you know, a group of people who actually built this country. You know, you motherfuckers, your ancestors prospered, you know, off the backs, free labor, you know, the things that were done, you know, children that were murdered, women that were raped, men that were snatched and took away from their families, you know, the horrible things, you know, for you guys to think that, you know, that shit shouldn't that be justified monetary wise. It's a bunch of bullshit. Nah, I know they don't like the truth, you know, and it's the truth, you know, because when some shit happened to one of them, you know, it's an outrage. Yep. So, you know, at the end of the day, picking cotton for 1% of the country was not building the country. You see, and you got ignorant motherfuckers like Matt Hall that says ignorant shit like that. Picking cotton was one of the number one sources that made billions back in those times off of cotton. And we made no money off of those cotton picking times. You know, it was millions that was made. You have companies now that and I don't want to get out, I don't want to get to throwing out the names of the country companies that still prosper through that cotton picking time, you know, but you got a lot of a lot of people, businesses that benefit and still benefit through that cotton picking era, you know. So when people come in and say stupid shit like that, you don't know the history. Yeah, I didn't even know how to read. You think your people were bit. See, and that's another horrible fucking stupid comment, you ignorant fool. Gigi, who do you think you motherfuckers learn how to build from? Who you think you got this knowledge from? See, I love when ignorant motherfuckers come in and say shit like that. Yes, we showed you guys the blueprint to that. Who you think you learned that from? Says the guy who's saying stupid ass shit. I haven't said one thing stupid at all. I'm pretty much stating a lot of facts that went on through the country. You just don't like what I'm saying. That's all. You know, tell me that slavery wasn't a horrible thing that happened to a group of people. The shit that was going on, the raping, the pillaging, the killing. You know, and that only that, you know, all the hard labor that was done, and these people were not paid monetary wise at all. And you think that that shit should just ride? That's crazy. You know, that's crazy for you motherfuckers to even think that we should just let that shit ride. You know, and that's what's wrong. And this country is always going to be separated and divided until you motherfuckers pretty much show responsibilities to what your ancestors did, you know. And I'm not blaming the whites of today, you know, but you motherfuckers, there's a lot of you motherfuckers are still benefiting from that shit, you know. But yeah, man, you know, give me your thoughts, give me your opinion on what Juneteenth mean to you. How do you celebrate it? How do you talk to your children about it? How do you, you know, because they want us to forget about this shit, you know. They slowly but surely taking a lot of you know, Black history out of the curriculums, out of our high schools. They're not trying to teach this to our kids. So, you know, it's up to us to continue to do our due diligence, you know, about talking about things like that. It's never divided by people like me. You know, I'm up here just stating facts about everything that went on in those times up to this day now. You know, the whole court system shows that, you know, whites have no regard for, you know, Black lives at all. You know, for a motherfucker to be able to shoot a motherfucker in the back that's running away shows me that there's no outside of the Black community, there's no regard for Black life. You know, until we understand and recognize that and start taking justice into our own hands and stop allowing for these court systems to come up with verdicts that we know that should be guilty. You know, but you know, at the end of the day, you know, we may not see the change that eventually will come in our lifetime. You know, just like how we didn't see our people at one point who ruled, who controlled this world and who ran shit. You know, far from diluted. My bad. You know, I'm just speaking facts, man, the truth. I mean, a lot of people don't like to hear the truth. A lot of people, a lot of whites want to for blacks to not talk about this or not continue to educate our people about that. John Bain said cotton pick and domestic help didn't build this country. Industrial North built this country. But and again, like I said, but I guarantee you, picking cotton made millions, and still, and to this day, cotton is making, it's $1 billion corporation, probably more than that. You know, and the Moors did rule Europe for many centuries. Yeah, you know, you motherfuckers act like who act like you don't know who taught you the blueprint of building this shit. It doesn't matter. Most of these most of the people who did own slaves after slavery went on to own businesses that prospered through slavery. Idiot. You motherfuckers always trying to kill me with that only 1%. It doesn't matter. You know, it was more than it was hundreds of slave owners. You know, so you know when they prosper and they benefit. I got it goddamn crook in my damn calf. Yep. So man, only thing I'm doing is stating facts, man. You know, we're talking about Juneteenth. You know, it was the ending of slavery. You know, and this is how crooked most of you guys' ancestors was. You know, you still won't even give the respect that and feel like these people were not due pay even after the 2 years. You know, so that's definitely going to be money added on to what's owed. Um, pickle juice, yeah. Okay, good look. Yeah, but you know what? Like I said, a lot of our people they worked years after the slavery was ended. Not one of you motherfuckers said anything. You continue to let these people work on these slave under these slave conditions, you know, without being paid, monetized, you know, meaning that those people, you know, were owed money that was due before slavery ended, and then they were due money after slavery ended because they still allow for these people to be out there knowing that slavery had ended and was working and still doing committing crimes, still killing, raping, and doing things like that. You know, so you know, and I'm quite sure, like I said, man, we need to get some of our smart black lawyers, man, to go back and trace a lot of these businesses that prospered and that went on to prosper and that's still prospering now. Um, you know, and go through it that way, man. You know, because like I said, that's where the money is going to come from. It's going to come from the government, you know, and it also needs to come from a lot of these companies that prosper off the backs of these slaves. You know, but man, we have to just continue, man, to build together. Like I said, you know, a lot of these businesses that's in the communities, man, we have to replace them with black businesses. We have to be able to build our own communities back up, and we can get it that way too. You know, by withdrawing our money from a lot of these businesses that really don't give a fuck about us. You know, we allow for, you know, these agents, you know, we allow for other ethnicities to come in our communities, you know, and rape us of our money, you know, and do nothing for the community. Yeah. So we as a group, as a whole, man, we have to take some type of responsibilities for our action too. Yep. So yeah, man, it's definitely been a great conversation, a great talk. I want to come in here and just, you know, give my thoughts on Juneteenth, give my opinion, um, you know, and just talk about how undivided this country is, man. And it shows, you know, the justice system and most whites have no regards for black lives, and it shows. You know, it shows through the comments. You know, it shows every time we talk about black history or slavery. You know, like this shit really didn't exist. You know, and for whites to, you know, to come in here and make comments about that and think that, you know, blacks should not be paid or owed anything from that, it's a disgrace. You know, so we as a group, man, we have to continue trying to build ourselves up individually, and then one day we'll be able to come together and make a change. You know, until then, man, with this law system, we have to be able to make sure that we're doing a better job at putting, blacks on these jury systems, man. That's jury systems. That's how CARMELO got pretty much railroaded, man. His peers did not look like him. He was not judged by his peers. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying he's not guilty, but he was protecting himself. He did not start that situation. This young man attacked him. They did not show all the video. They show, if they would have, a lot of this stuff we wouldn't even be talking about. And then at the end of the day, if that young man wouldn't have put his hands on Carmelo Anthony, we wouldn't even be talking about this. He had no self-control. He had no Austin Metcalf could have walked away. Guarantee you, if that jury would have at least 3 to 4 blacks on there, we wouldn't even be talking about this. Because most blacks would have been okay, with like I said, manslaughter charges, anything from like 5 to 10, maybe 15 years. We saw, like I said, cops walk away with no time for shooting blacks in the back. This whole Ryan Hidden situation, young man was shot in the back for running away. And it was a justified murder is what it was. He didn't, Chris Hillman. Carmelo Anthony didn't have to get out the tent. He had it right there. He was actually invited by one of his friends to be in the tent. I don't think it was a sign saying that no other teams or no other people could not be up at a tent. At the end of the day, man, Austin Mack didn't have any conflict resolution. He could have walked away, or he could have went and got someone else with higher authority. He tried to he tried to do what most whites, what most of you do, what we see most of you Karens trying to do to blacks. Always trying to control or lead or think you can just put your motherfucking hands on somebody without having to paying the consequence. And that's what happened that day. Carmelo Anthony wasn't going for that shit, and he took matters into his own hands. But I will tell you guys this: Carmelo Anthony will be coming home one day. Austin Metcalf will not. He will not. Because of his actions. Oh, I'm definitely thirsty. That's why I'm sipping this. Yeah, but no, man, at the end of the day, it was Austin Metcalf who made the decision, that cost his life. Can you guys agree with that? Can you white folks agree with that? He started the actions that led to him losing his life. Carmelo Anthony, before any of that happened, I guarantee you, he paid no attention to Austin Metcalf. He was just under that tent like everybody else, taking cover under the rain. And let's talk about this whole Rick Child situation. What about the young man who was chased out of the store, who were accused and thought to be stealing water? This young man, and yeah, there's, in my opinion, there's no accountability, when the shoe is always on the other foot, but these motherfuckers always got excuses, when a black man is trying to defend himself. But yeah, the whole Rick Child situation, that was a horrible decision. And records say this young man was over 100 yards away running from the store. So you mean to tell me that this was a justified shooting? This man could have not feared for his life. This motherfucker was over 100 yards. That's a football field away. So how could the jury or the judge or anyone find that justified? But yeah, back to the whole Karen thing, because I see somebody made a comment, that's what white people think that they can do. They think that they can direct and they feel like they have the authority and the right, and this goes back to the slavery shit. Some of you guys still have that fucking mindset that you have authority over us, what you don't, and Austin Metcalf found that out the hard way. Yep. So, at the end of the day, man, you guys need to realize that shit like this is going to continue to happen. When you think you can put your hands on a motherfucker, and there's nothing going to happen. I'm gonna be honest. We need to start taking. That's why I said we need to start taking justice into our own hands. Shit like that needs to start happening more often, and motherfuckers that think twice about doing shit like that. Real talk, and not to, and look, and I definitely have sympathy for this young man's family. He shouldn't have not died. Both of these young men were put in a fucked up situation. Did that young man deserve to die? No. Both young men should have been able to walk away and go home that day. But at the end of the day, you guys do have to take some type of responsibility. And Austin Metcalf, meaning that he's taking no responsibility, or you guys are not taking no responsibility for his actions. You act like Carmelo Anthony went over there and started shit with him. Yeah. So no, man, it's just, we've been living in an unjust system, and I'm 50 years old. I've been living in an unjust system since I've been born, and we've been seeing case in case over and over again through the justice system. That really there's no regard for black lives outside of the black community. And I'm not going to say all white people, because there is a lot of white people that do speak up about the injustice, throughout the country. Uh, I see it's a lot of comments coming through BJ3. I believe they either coming from Facebook. They're coming from Facebook and YouTube. I don't know why you can't see them. The comments are turned on. Yeah, but yeah, man. I need for you guys to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Your boy is banging on 1,000 subscribers. This is a goal that we set out a few years ago, and we are knocking on the door. And I want to thank everybody who made comments, even the idiots who made comments. It all matters. Okay, BJ3 said we have been brainwashed to be like the white race, to be doing something. I live in CA, and Chinese fried chicken spots are supported more than black chicken spots. Yeah, and that's a fact. We've done our own selves undue justice, or we've created a lot of this shit on our own. We have to get back to, and I'm starting to see a lot of black owned Chinese businesses starting to come into play, and we need to replace these businesses with our own businesses. And a lot of this stuff we won't be able to complain and talk about. We support. And this is what drives me crazy with whites and and all these Asians that's speaking up. We've funded your motherfucking businesses for decades. We've made you guys as rich. You guys gained a lot of money off the back, blood, sweat, and tears off our ancestors' back. And it was money that was due. For whites to think that slavery should have not come with a monetary price after it was over with, just shows you the disrespect and the disregard for the life of our ancestors. All the horrible shit that we've heard in the books, and that we've seen, the rape, the killings of the babies, just all type of shit that was going on and happening that we saw. You don't think that this shit should end with a monetary type gain for the ancestors of those people? You a fucking idiot to think that. Because the Jews didn't think that. When no one said that when they got paid back their reparations, and like I said, when they paid China back their reparations, no one complained about any of that. Somebody said the Civil War was over 160 years ago. Okay. These Asians are no good for blacks either. Let me go back. There's a lot of comments coming through, y'all. So I'm trying to read them as I can, as they come through. Okay, these Asian here, I'm gonna put that up. Okay, I say these Asian restaurants are no good for blacks either. Never spend my money in those places. Let me make sure I go down. I agree. We have to get out. We have to We have to separate ourselves from spending money with these type of businesses that have no respect or no regard for the lives of blacks. We've continued to enriching the lives of many Asians, many Caucasians, and will not support our own. That's stemming from slavery, in my opinion. That we have a problem that we will go out and support all these other businesses first before we try to uplift and support our own people businesses. But a change is coming. I think most of us are waking up. A lot of us is seeing what's going on. A lot of people is pulling the wool from over our eyes, and waking up to what's been really going on, even through the justice system. Man, we see we've been railroaded throughout time, in the court system. With the rulings that we see young men being shot in the back, and the court system allowing these cops to walk away with justified homicides. Because that's what they were. Tell me where you can go and shoot a motherfucker in the back and get away with it. No one. Yep. So look, man, I just want to come on. I invited a few people to come on. I want to come on and get my thoughts. On this whole Juneteenth, it's Freestyle Friday. I want to have a few multiple conversations, but I wanted to a few of my guests to come on in and chop it up with me. But at the end of the day, it's been a good conversation, a good talk. I love seeing all the comments, all the hatred coming in for that these white folks have against us, for something that we didn't do. Even with the whole Austin Metcalf, he started the situation. He lost his life over something he started. You motherfuckers act like Carmelo Anthony should have not defended his life. The young man just happened to die. Yeah, but look, man, I'm not going to be long. I just want to come over here and talk for a little bit. Hopefully, everybody's having a great Friday. Hopefully, everybody enjoyed their Juneteenth off if you didn't have to work. And then hopefully everybody had conversations, man, with their kids, and just this is always a good time to reflect and educate, those who may not know anything about Juneteenth or just know anything about history. So this is always a time to, educate whites who don't really know anything about history, because if you really did and you really understood the hardship and like I said, the blood and sweat and tears that these people lost, you wouldn't even say this shit. If this shit and this is what they're afraid of. They're afraid of if once we get back on top, this is what they're afraid of, that we're going to do what they have done to us. And there was a lot of horrible shit that was done. Just go back, whites, go back and look at all the horrible shit that was done. And you think that that should have just been that and nothing should be done about it. Reparations is a dummy dream. Shadow Band said that. Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so like I said, for the other people that were paid, and I'm stop mentioning these other races that were paid reparations, but yeah, United States have paid reparations to multiple races that were due reparations for the cruelty that was done to them. So why wouldn't you think reparations should have be paid to African Americans? You guys benefited. You guys made most of those slave owners made millions. And like I said, after the end of slavery, went on to be business owners from the money that was generated through slavery. The whole cotton picking thing. You motherfuckers try to act like that was not $1 million, and today that it's not $1 billion corporations to be in the cotton industry. But look, man, at the end of the day, man, we have to start taking justice into our own hands. We cannot allow for any other races to control our destiny. We have to take our own destinies into our own hands. We cannot be controlled, and this is what whites have to realize too. Those days of you guys trying to control and tell blacks what they're going to do, and this was the whole situation with Carmelo Anthony. A lot of this shit he probably got from his father and his mother. And what's up with this whole watermelon felon type shit? This is crazy. It's more of you motherfuckers that are felons than us. And I'm quite sure plenty of you motherfuckers like watermelon too. You know, that's the shit that you know, that cracks me up. You know, the hypocrisy, especially coming from, you know, and I'm not going to say all, but you know, a lot of shit that was done. You know, there's no way that for you people to think that something should have not be done after that shows the respect that you guys have for Black Americans, and that's it. You know, so at the end of the day, guys, we have to be able to take control of our own destinies. You know, and the only way of doing that is trying to get more of us on these jury systems to be able to change the outcomes of a lot of these cases, because we're being railroaded in that system. We have to be able to get more blacks involved on these juries. You know, but we need more black prosecutors. You know, we need more black attorneys that's going to be out there. You know, to be able to represent our people. You know, because if we're not going to do it, our damn sure not going to do it for us. You know, so that's one way of trying to, you know, even up this justice system, even though this system has always been set up for us to fail and not be able to, you know, prosper. You know, the whole justice system and criminal system and is set up, is a system set up for us to be able to fail, for them to be able to still capitalize monetary wise every time. You know, this whole justice system is just set up in another play that was moved to enslave us too. Yep. So I want to thank Gwen Hop for her comments. She made a lot of comments, man. A lot of people just don't want to be real. You know, we understand, you know, but you know, we won't see it in our lifetime. But you know, once our people get back in control of the situation, their people will have to pay the sacrifice for what was done to our people. You know, because I tell you one thing: if we don't get it back now, we'll definitely get it back in blood one day. And that's how shit normally. That's how the universe normally works things out. Yep. So look, man, I want to thank everybody who made comments. I want to thank everybody who came on and made a comment. I want to thank everybody who subscribed, who shared. You know, like I said, your boy is closing down on 1,000 subscribers. It was a goal we set out, and we're knocking on the door. And I cannot do it without you guys not hitting that button. You know, so I appreciate everybody who hit that button. I appreciate everybody who commented and had something to say. You know, so at the end of the day, man, it was a good show. I just want to come on here and take time to reflect on what Juneteenth means to me, and what Juneteenth mean. You know, what it should mean to all blacks. You know, just you have to, you know, take time to reflect and think on the things that the things that our ancestors went through for us to, like I said, to be able to see the for us to be able to pretty much prosper and be able to be successful business owners, to be able to go to navigate through this world without being discriminated. Which we still get discriminated against a lot, you know, but we have to give praise and thanks to our ancestors who lost their lives, who were raped, who were killed. You know, the blood and sweat and tears for us to be able to have a better life. You know, a lot of people forget about that. You know, the things that our ancestors went through, the things that they saw, the things that were done to them, man. You have to, you know, you have to give praise and you have to give thanks, because a lot that they went through, I wouldn't be able to, without the things that they went through, I would not be able to be doing what I'm doing now, up here talking to you guys. You know, and that's it, man. You know, so I want to thank everybody who's still making the comments. It was a great conversation, you know, and that's what we do over here on the What Up Though Show, man. We try to have great conversations. We try to educate the uneducated, you know, and then And then just at the end of the day, man, just great entertainment and talk. So look, I appreciate everybody again who made comments. It was another one. It's your boy Dame D, and I am out. And enjoy the rest of your Juneteenth. Peace.